Once you have a lettering segment up on screen, you can manipulate it by changing the height, the width, the slant angle, and you can even begin to kern individual pairs of letters. So that's changing the space between different sets of letters. So let's take a look in DesignShop at how to do some of that. If I right-click on a lettering segment and I go to Properties, just under my alphabet, I have access to the height. If I change my height, I can do that by double-clicking in here and scrolling on my mouse. I can double-click and I can type what I want it to be, or I could click on these arrows to change it. I can hit Apply to see that change take place, but keep my object properties open. So now I have a lettering segment that is 1.5 inches tall. One thing I want you to be aware of is if I put something in here with a descender, like a Y or a J, notice that my lettering height is still set to 1.5 inches, but the height of my design is actually 2. So when I'm looking at the height of the letters, it is measuring from the baseline to the ascender height. So let me look at that again and actually draw on it. So when I'm measuring the height of the letter, I am measuring from my ascender height to my baseline. It will not count the descenders. Let's go back to a tool that I can actually use. Clear the screen. And let's take off the Y. So we have the ability to change the height, and when I do that it changes proportionally. What I can also do is I can change the width. So when I change the width, let's go to something like 70% and hit Apply. Notice that the height stays the same, but it's changing the width of the letter based on the original digitized proportion. So it's only changing the width. It's a nice way to mimic a condensed alphabet. I can also take this up to maybe something like 130 and mimic a much wider alphabet. Now the software is not going to limit you. I could take this all the way down to 10% and the software would let me. Now we can tell just by looking at this, especially on the vertical line in the L, that that's probably not going to sew very well. It's going to start filtering out stitches and it's just not going to work well for me. The software will not limit you, so you need to take a look at your design and kind of stick in a safe zone. For me, I like to stay anywhere between 70 to about 130%, and I'll push that every now and then, but that tends to be my safer zone for changing the width of the letters. Let's take this back to 100%. So the height changes the height proportionally, the width changes just the width and does not adjust the height at all. The slant allows you to change the degree at which the letters fall. So it allows you to mimic an italicized alphabet. So you can mimic an italic font, you can have it go forward or you can have it go back by adding a negative number in here. You can have it make the letters go the opposite way, so you can make it look like the letters are going really fast. All right, let's take this back to 0 degrees. Let's take this back to 1 inch. And I'm going to change this back to block. So if we look at this lettering, let me get a pen up here in a different color so I can mark up on this. This is an overlay tool that I use to mark up on screen. If I look at this lettering, you'll notice the space between the L and the C makes it look like those two letters are farther apart than every other letter. So this space, I would almost prefer for these letters to come in a little bit. And the adjustment of this type of spacing is called kerning. K-E-R-N-I-N-G. And to do that, I'm going to utilize these icons here. So I want to take out space between the L and the C, And anybody that deals with typography is somebody that's going to have to be dealing with this. Anytime you have a letter that is wide on one area and narrow on the other, so in this case the L, very narrow at the top, bigger at the bottom, next to a curved letter, anything like that, you're going to have that kind of disparate spacing, or at least the appearance of it. So to adjust that, I'm going to insert my cursor between the L and the C, and then I'm going to come over and I'm going to click on this top icon, this little A with the arrow to the left. Clicking on that puts in a little symbol that's going to indicate that I'm squishing the C closer to the L. Now when I hit apply, watch what happens to the L and the C. They get a little bit closer together. If I wanted to move them closer together even yet, I could add more of these marks. I can add so many that my letters actually overlap. So I'm going to delete these so that I just have one. And that looks pretty good to me. If I needed to add space, let's say between the M and the E, I don't, but I need to demonstrate how to do this. So let's say I needed to. I could insert my cursor between the M and the E, and then I could click on the middle icon, and that will add space between those letters. So I hit apply and it added just a little bit of space there. If I needed to trim between a letter, I don't have any that I need to right now, but if I did, I could insert my cursor and then click on the trim icon, and it'll insert another little symbol that indicates a trim. Hit apply and it would trim any threads between those letters. So you can manually adjust kerning with these top two, and you can add a trim with this bottom one. Alright, so let me delete some of these characters and get us kind of back to where we were. So far, we've adjusted the height, we've adjusted the letter width, we've done the slant angle, and we've kerned our letters, and we've done that all through the lettering properties. We can also do all of that graphically. If I select my lettering segment and I want to scale my lettering, I can click on this corner and I can scale it just like I was scaling a design. Software's not going to limit me, so be careful with that. If I want it to scale proportionally, I would hold Shift to scale proportionally. If I want it to scale center out, I could hold Alt to scale center out, and if I want to do both, I can hold both to scale both center out and proportionally. So I can change the letter height very easily that way. If I want to change the width, I can just grab on the side and change just the width. If I want to change just the height and leave the width of the lettering exactly the same, I can click on the top square here and I can drag this up. That's something that's really hard to do with the numbers, but graphically it makes it really easy. All right, so let me go back in and reset this. I'm going to go to 1 inch, I'm going to go to 100%. There we go. The next thing we dealt with was the slant angle. So when I have my resize edit box up here, if I click in it again, my handles hollow out. If I go over that top handle and click and drag, I can slant my lettering. If I go over the side, I can skew it. That's actually something that's pretty tough to do with just the numbers in the object or the lettering properties box. You'll also notice that if I go over the side, I can rotate my lettering. So I can change the slant angle, I can skew it, I can rotate it. Let me undo a couple times to get something back to a little bit more normal. The other thing that we did was we adjusted some kerning. So when I select lettering, I get a little kind of X in the middle of each of my letters. That's the handle for that letter. If I click on that handle, I can drag that letter along the baseline. So I can scoot that a little bit closer to the L, and I can grab the O and scoot it a little bit closer to the C. So now I can adjust kerning graphically as well. And here's that trim that I would need. Trims, I do have to go into my software or into the lettering properties and add that trim. So between the L and the C, there's that connector. I'm going to insert my cursor. I'm going to click on the trim icon, hit apply, and OK. So I've adjusted the height, I've adjusted the width, I've adjusted the slant angle, I've kerned letters all graphically for the entire lettering segment. The other thing that you can do is you can do that all for a single letter. If I select that lettering segment, I can click on a single letter and I can do everything I just did. Scale it, slant it, I can change the color of it, I can change the alphabet for it. I can scoot it around. If I want to move something off a baseline, I can hold Control when I drag on the handle to move it off of the baseline. So you've got a lot of flexibility editing those spaces and size and manipulating your letters both through the lettering properties as well as on screen.